Ever wondered how a war in one part of the world can affect your pocket? Let's dive into the intriguing world of global economics. As the first shots were fired in the Middle East, the world held its breath. The initiation of the war brought immediate chaos, not just in the region but also in the global economic landscape. The uncertainty reverberated across global markets, with investors dreading the potential economic fallout. It was as if a storm had been forecasted, and everyone hurried to secure their economic vessels. Oil, often dubbed as the lifeblood of the global economy, became a focal point of concern. The Middle East, home to some of the largest oil reserves on the planet, was now a theater of war, and the immediate impacts were profound. Oil prices began to rise, a reaction to the potential disruption in supply. It was as if the world's economic pulse had quickened at the onset of this conflict. But what does a rise in oil prices mean for the everyday person? Well, it's quite simple. Oil isn't just used to fuel our cars, it's a critical component in a wide array of goods and services. When oil prices rise, it costs more to produce and deliver these goods and services. This increased cost is often passed on to consumers, leading to higher prices, or what economists call inflation. As oil prices climbed, the shadow of inflation began to loom over the global economy. It was a chain reaction, a series of dominoes falling one after the other. The war had begun, oil prices were rising, and now inflation was starting to creep into the picture. Just as a stone creates ripples when thrown into a pond, so too did the start of the Middle East war begin to affect the world economy. As the war dragged on, its effects started to be felt far and wide. Let's delve into the domino effect that this conflict triggered on a global scale. The war disrupted the oil supply chain, creating a ripple effect that reached corners far beyond the Middle East. Due to the conflict, major oil producers had to increase their supply to offset the void left by embargoes on certain nations. This sudden surge in demand led to a hike in oil prices, which in turn influenced a wide range of sectors globally. From transportation to manufacturing, the cost of operations rose, pushing the prices of goods and services upward. This is how the war indirectly fueled world inflation. But the domino effect didn't stop there. It also reverberated through the world's food markets. The Middle East is not just a significant oil player, it's also a key exporter of agricultural goods. The war hampered agricultural activities and trade, causing a major disruption in the global food supply chain. This led to an increase in food prices around the world. Countries that heavily depend on imports from the Middle East for their food supply were hit particularly hard, forcing them to grapple with food security concerns. In essence, the war in the Middle East didn't just affect the nations directly involved. It had a far-reaching impact, causing ripples across the globe. The surge in oil and food prices triggered by the conflict became a significant contributor to world inflation. The war was not just a regional conflict anymore, it had become a global economic issue. Fast forward to today, and the effects of the war are still being felt in our daily lives. The global economy is in a state of flux, with inflation rates soaring as a direct result of the conflict. Energy and food prices have skyrocketed, and these increases are being passed down to consumers, affecting households worldwide. We've seen agricultural commodities rise by 35% in just 1 month, and the trend shows no signs of slowing down. The war has also led to significant policy changes. Governments are implementing more subsidies to alleviate the impact of rising prices, but this is not without its own set of challenges. These subsidies are adding to the already heavy debt burdens of many low-income countries, further complicating the economic landscape. In the midst of this, the Middle East remains a significant player in the global oil market, with major oil producers increasing supply to offset embargoes on Russian cargoes. The region continues to influence global energy prices. However, the war has also led to some countries revising their strategies, such as Canada studying ways to increase pipeline utilization to boost crude exports. Looking ahead, if the war continues, we could see even more dramatic shifts in the global economy. The World Bank has warned that the current inflation could potentially fuel social unrest, echoing the sentiments that led to the Arab Spring uprising in 2010. Furthermore, countries heavily reliant on wheat imports from Ukraine and Russia, like Egypt, could face worsening food security concerns. The implications are far-reaching and complex. The war has not only disrupted the present, but it's also shaping the future in ways that are still unfolding. As the situation evolves, so too will our understanding of its impacts on the global economy. But one thing is clear, the Middle East war, though geographically distant for some, has left no corner of the world untouched in its economic ramifications. Here, in the span of just a few years, a regional conflict has transformed into a global economic affair. To recap, the onset of war in the Middle East had immediate and far-reaching impacts on the world's economy. It has led to fluctuations in oil prices, changes in trade patterns, and a spike in inflation rates. The domino effect was palpable. As oil prices rose, so did the cost of goods and services globally, triggering a rise in inflation. This in turn led to changes in policy and strategy by central banks and governments, further escalating the economic impact of the conflict. As we navigate the present state, we're also looking at future implications. The war's impact on global growth and inflation continues to loom, with the potential to trigger social unrest as economic hardships intensify. This situation underscores the interconnectedness of our global economy. A conflict in one region can cause ripples that touch every corner of the world, affecting everything from the price of a loaf of bread to the stability of financial markets. As we continue to feel the economic ripples of the Middle East war, we're reminded of how interconnected our world truly is. Even the price of your morning coffee can be traced back to events happening thousands of miles away.